3 seconds.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Three Consulting Amigos. Today, Ed Lasak is going to be speaking to us about how we can use these models to build value inside your company. And it's going to be a great opportunity for those of you who are watching to be able to see how you can do this. So without further ado, I'm going to put Ed on the line here, and he's going to go through his presentation. Ed, take it away.
Thank you, Ray. We have been spending the last several weeks talking about ways to increase the value of your company. And we've been exploring a lot of different models. We've talked about EOS. We talked about Baldrige, USA, Baldrige, California. And last week, we talked about the diamond value model that Ron has developed from a marketing perspective. And today, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the valuation wheel that I use from 35 years of experience. The valuation wheel was developed by looking at valuation methodologies for valuing a company, as well as the inclusiveness of the financial statements, which I think we would all agree that the financial statements are the ultimate metric for achieving success in a company. And a lot of people talk about a lot of metrics that are important, but the one that really counts is the financial statements, and it includes a period of time as well as a point in time, which means you're dealing with the balance sheet and for determining wealth. So I'd like to first start off, why should we be building value? And it seems like it is a lot of work to build value. So why should we do it? And some companies are smaller than others. Some have more resources. Some people maybe do not focus on wealth, on building value in their company, but maybe they should, because I think every metric we all live by day in and day out is to look at how much wealth we have accumulated, primarily in the stock market. We're looking at stock results on a daily basis, determining how this stock did and that stock did. But when you look at it from a small business perspective, what I've been reading, most small businesses, 80% of the wealth of that family is in the business. So if you're focusing so much time and effort on stocks, maybe you should focus a little bit more time and effort on building the value of your company. So the goal is, besides increasing wealth, the goal is to increase wealth so you have more options for your exit strategy. And most businesses don't want to talk about exit strategy because that means they're no longer involved. They moved on to something else, and some of it might not be by choice. So it's kind of like they wait to the last minute to talk about it, and hopefully there's enough time for them to come up with a plan of attack to execute so that the business is protected. But the bottom line is the business has a better chance of being protected. There's a greater chance of obtaining greater wealth. You have more options available to you when you're exiting the business, if the value of that business is humming very good, meaning that the business is going to have a lot of potential buyers if you want to go that way. If you want to keep it in the family, that's an opportunity also. It's healthier. The stronger the company is, the greater chance that it's going to survive succession. So that's really important. So you can delay decisions on exit strategy until you're ready, as long as you're building value in your company. And obviously, the more you build value in your company, the more money you have for an enriching retirement, which is also important. But I go back to my days of going to church and listening to the Bible. And one of the things they talk about is good stewardship. We all know the parable of somebody who given us so much money, 3 people, and one person squandered it, one person had no return, and one person had a great return. Well, that kind of goes along with business in my mind. And you're given a responsibility to build something and make it better and make it more valuable. And the last thing is Baldrige, which is the Department of Commerce now. Their website is WWNIST. This is a profound statement, and it just shows that's a good investment. A dollar invested in value building returns $820 to the U.S. economy. That's a pretty unbelievable statement.
Yeah.
Any comments from what I said so far, gents?
Well, I think it was good that you kind of laid that out. And the thing is, as you pointed out, Ed, is that you can go in the stock market where you have no control, but you can actually work inside your business where you have a huge amount more control over what happens and how you improve performance. I mean, Ron, is that consistent with your thoughts?
Oh yeah, sure, no doubt about that. I've been in business for a long time, 50 years, and I've only really recently started spending any time on my stock portfolio in the last 2 years, 3 years. I wouldn't be, and it's been helpful to do that. I've done well by paying attention to it, whereas I always let somebody just kind of ride on its own. But I would never do that if I had a business to run, because you don't have you can make choices as to whether to buy and sell, but you sure have no input as to how that business should grow or how it should cut expenses or what. They don't, you don't really count there. All you get to do is vote for people, that you don't know once a year, and buy or sell the stock. And so those are your choices. It's not really management,
Yeah, no, I agree. So good thing, Ed. This is it's good presentation.
So let's move forward here. Let's talk a little bit about the process of building value. You have to have a roadmap. You're never going to get somewhere if you don't have a roadmap. So you have to take the time to prepare one, and it defines where you're going and how you're going to get there. And when we talk about roadmaps, we talk about first step is developing a strategic plan, 3 to 5 years. And that's done by, first of all, looking at the opportunities that are in the market using a SWOT analysis, which can be really liberating and very powerful in determining the future. The valuation wheel that we're going to be talking about in a little bit of time here is something that develops strategies to build value and reduce risk. And a lot of the different models that are out there, they talk a lot about process, but they don't talk about how to do it as much. And so I kind of think the value wheel offers some advantages in that area. You want to develop measurable action plans for alignment, teamwork, and accountability, because it all comes down to implementing it once you've developed it. And I love to forecast financial statements out 3 to 5 years. It's not done very often, but it's a true measure of how well you are achieving your strategic plan. It's a universal test of value. And so I like to always include that. And as being a CPA, that's obviously something that's near and dear to my heart. The dashboards, I think, have to be weekly metrics that you're looking at on a weekly basis, making sure you're moving forward. And then you need to have evaluation of your financial statements on a monthly basis to see if you're on target to meet your forecasts. And forecasts are extremely important, obviously. Annual evaluations of the company, that's where you try to determine how much incremental value has been added. And that's what you use to reward management and determine success. And obviously, to make all this work, you have to have some outside assistance, whether it's a CFO, consultants, professional implementers, etc. Somebody's got to come in and make sure that process is being adhered to on a weekly basis and being monitored on a monthly and quarterly basis so that progress is being made. And I'll let you guys speak to these points before going on to the next one.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Ed. I was going to say, and I don't know how Ron feels about this, but one of the things, because I'm not a financial guy, if there's anything that I see missing in most of the companies with which I worked, is this regular review of their financial statements, so that they could actually see where they were going and make adjustments based on what they needed to do as opposed to what they thought would work. And I think one of the things that I've seen in working with you directly is that you bring that value that most people can't. And I think that's where, what we're talking about, you don't need to hire somebody full-time. You just need somebody who can focus you on the right things to look at.
Yeah, I
Very
think
good.
you've kind of got all the major points. I agree. I kind of focused on the forecasted financial statements. I agree that it's not done nearly enough. And I was just kind of thinking back, and when I had a really complicated business to run in the retail business, it was a long time ago, but I used to do a full year by month in order to be able to determine more things than just how well was I doing. But when you really use it as a tool, you can use it to change where you thought you were going to go
Yeah,
and make adjustments. 2 or 3, 4 months hence. In the retail business, as in the wholesale business, and in some cases manufacturing business, where they have to hold before they sell everything if they don't custom build everything to order. Inventory is a major um, driver of business. I mean, it really is the driver of business a lot of times. And so having the right inventory at the right time is very, very key. So it's hard to know how much inventory you're going to need unless you've properly determined what the demand is going to be all the way down to the SKU, if possible. A lot of people think that that's hard to do, and to that I would say, well, it may not be simple to do, but that's why Amazon's beating you to death. You go on, you take a look at something that you like, and it'll tell you we've got 4 of these left, and it's like, okay, how many other people are going to buy it before I get there? And then they'll say, you're going to receive this in X number of days, or we're out of stock. It's going to be 3 weeks. So that then has something to do with what the person is the buyer is going to do. And in that particular case, of course, you just go someplace else and buy the same thing from another company. I did that yesterday. I do that every few days. And so having the inventory is a big key. I'm not so sure that I would say that the forecasted financial statement should be the universal test of value. I think you're right, it is. I don't know if it should be, because to use it the way you use it, Ed, is as a measurement against the plan. And I think it's important to say this is measurement against the plan, because you did say that. And I just want to emphasize that, because just doing a forecast isn't nearly as helpful as if you compare it to the plan.
right.
So that's pretty key piece to that. And while for everyone who does a forecasted financial statement, I'll bet you only 10 of them compare it to what their strategic plan was.
Right.
Yeah, you're right on that. But that really is the regiment you have to go through to make this process work.
Yeah, or I should say 1 out of 10 is what I meant to say. You're right. That's what makes it work. And so I was trying to emphasize you need to do both of those pieces, or you're not getting all the value. That $840 for every dollar you spend, I'm sure that has to do with executing things well.
Yeah.
I think another point, you brought up another great point, Ron, and that is like inventories. Most people look at income statements going out, if they're lucky. If anybody looks at income statements, probably 30% of the people develop full income statements going out 5 years. But if you don't develop the balance sheet going out 5 years, you're missing a big opportunity, and you're hiding a lot of potential risk.
Right.
Because
Well, and
inventories are going to be
right.
in your balance sheet, and the cost of sales is going to be in your income statement.
Well,
And
right, and that brings up an interesting point. I always had inventory on my forecasting sheet. Now that was for a couple of reasons. I mean, in those days, I could only do one sheet, and because this was before computers were very powerful, so I had 14 columns and X number. So I couldn't really do a whole lot like we can today. But I I put the inventory on there because the major expense that you have is buying inventory. And so while it's not an expense in the sense of regular expenses, that's the most important purchase that you make is the inventory. So you don't know anything about what to buy if you're not having interface back and forth between sales and your inventory levels at category at SKU level. So
Right.
that's another whole discussion.
Yeah, it
we
is.
could
We'll
we could
move
do a
on.
whole meeting
Good
on
point.
inventory. Yeah.
We're doing a series of articles on these value building models. And we've talked a lot about Baldrige, US, Baldrige, California. We talked about EOS. There's another model out there called the Value Builders. Last week, we talked about the diamond value. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the valuation wheel. And we all want to know how all these value building models compare to ISO, because they're involved with all the manufacturing businesses that operate in the country. So there has to be some tie-in there also. So we'll continue evaluating these models. And so at this point in time, I'd like to just move on and start talking about the valuation wheel. And here is the valuation wheel. And it's something that you just can't read a book on and learn all there is to know about it. It requires a lot of gray hair in the room, a lot of experience of sitting in the seat of these companies and doing these operations and trying to create value. And I think that's one of the things that distinguishes this model from some of the other models that are out there is that they use people that don't have 30 years of experience or 10 years worth of experience as a CFO, CEO, marketing director. They're more of business coaches without the experience. And I think it's really hard to implement the model, the valuation wheel, without that experience. So I think when you do this model, it's more of a conceptual framework to use for our identifying value that exists. And it's hard to be, and you can tie it into another model that has the regiment of weekly meetings, etc. But I think you really need the context to really develop the value of the company. So in this model, we talk about 8 different strategic drivers of value. And as you would imagine, the top 3 have to do with revenue, which is extremely important. It's the lifeblood of the company. You don't have a company without customers and a market and revenue. So in last week's presentation, we talked a lot about these top 3. I'd like to talk just a little bit about all 8 right now, just to give kind of an overview here of what's going on. But the market position and potential, there's nothing more important than analyzing the market and your position in it. And as we learned from Ron, if you're number 1 or number 2 in that market, you have the ability to control pricing more than you would if you're the low-cost provider of a service or a product. So that's extremely important. So you have to determine, what would it take for you to be number 1 or number 2, and the cost might be too much. But it's something to look at, and you look for cracks in the market for opportunities to grow revenue. So that's item number 1. That's driver number 1. Driver number 2 is a customer. You have nothing without a customer. And the more loyal your customers are, the stickier they are to your operation. And stickiness means they're just not a strong indication that they're going to leave your company. The stickier they are, the more likely they're going to be with the company. So you have more opportunities to have adjustments in pricing than you would if you were a low-cost provider. And it's all about, as Ron has preached to us over and over, it's all about the perceived value the customer has of the company. And that's extremely important. So obviously any type, and then you get into your revenue story, you got to have a revenue story, because people will pay above and beyond market for a good revenue story. And that not only includes the revenue growth over the last 5 years and in the next 5 years, it also includes the gross profit margins, because revenue without good profit margins is kind of defeating the whole purpose of running a business. You got to have growing profit margins along with your revenue. Number 4 is efficiency, scalability, productivity, quality. And this is the secret sauce of what you provide to your customers. And it's a process that has to be improved constantly. And the better the quality and productivity and scalability and your efficiencies, obviously, the more value the company is worth. And number 5 is capital investments. It's important to invest back into the company. Some people don't invest back in the company, and their company deteriorates over time. You have to make investments. You want to make high ROI, return on investments in projects that really make a difference to your product, to your process, and to your marketing. And number 6 is optimize the balance sheet and cash flow. A lot of times people don't look at the balance sheet. I think it's probably the most misunderstood statement of the financial statements, but there's a lot of value in understanding what's in those numbers. And it's really important to make sure you're generating free cash flow after taxes and all other expenditures that are out there. Number 7 is, companies focus on inside entirely most of the time, but you also have to look outside of the company to see what opportunities exist. And if you don't do that, you're missing out on a great opportunity. And it's just not normal for people to do that because they're so wound up in the business trying to meet all their goals and objectives every day that they just don't have any time to think on other things. But it's really important to look for M&A opportunities. And probably even more important is partnership opportunities where you can partner with another company by consolidating some operation and sharing in the savings where both of you make more money without impacting your market position. So I would really encourage people to look outside of the company. The last item is reevaluating and reforecasting. Is your performance adequate? Do you need to look at changes in personnel? What is the opportunity for getting the owner out of the day-to-day operations and things of that nature? So, and then it starts all over again. It's a continuous type of process over and over and over, trying to gain value in the corporation. And from that, I'd like to open it up to you guys for any comments you may have on that.
I guess we don't have any comments on that.
I guess
No,
not.
I was just going to say, I can add, as you look at this and you're going through it again, Ed, it's a simple process, but what my experience has been, people following a simple process is it looks simple, but it's not easy to do. And I think that's where the people lose it. When they don't have, like Ed, like Ron was saying, it's one thing to have a forecast, but it's another thing to compare it against a plan on a regular and consistent basis so you can see where you need to make adjustments. And to me, what you've done here is you laid it out for them in a simple way that they can do that. So I
Yeah.
think this is very helpful.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ray. Each one of these can, has the potential of being highly complex.
Right.
And in my practice, I think that the two of the big reasons, I don't know if they're the biggest, but two of the big reasons that smaller businesses fail is because they're unable to understand what their real market is and what the potential is, and they don't really focus on the customer so they don't pay attention to the customer. It's a perfunctory kind of paying attention to the customer,
Right.
not a real deep we're going to blow you away with
Right.
whatever it is that we're doing. And therefore they fail because they never really get them in a market traction. They don't get traction with the customer, traction within their marketplace. They're in their niche market, and so they don't have much of a revenue story as a result. Their scalability and productivity is, they can probably do a better job, but none of that really matters if you can't make the first two work. And
Yeah.
I can tell you, those two things alone are very, very difficult to do. Very
Yeah.
difficult to do.
Well, I think, what this reminds me of, Ed, and I don't know if you guys have seen, there's a meme running around now, and it says, marriage is hard, divorce is hard, choose your heart. Building value in your business is hard. Going the easy route is hard. Choose your heart,
Yeah. That's good, Ray. I like that. That's a good one.
That's true.
I would just say one comment, just a little bit deferential on number 3. And I don't know if you literally meant this to be true, but when you said you got to increase your revenue and increase your gross profit margins, I think there are times when increasing the gross profit margin as the percentage can actually reduce the market potential. And so that always has to be balanced with your number 4, number 5, et cetera, because if you can increase your volume and increase your gross profit dollars, you can make more money than if you're just looking at it as a percentage. So I think that's what you meant, but I just thought I'd clarify that the profit margins as a percentage, that's desirable, but not always possible. Or many times that's not optimizing the revenue by having margins that are driven by too high prices. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it also comes.
That's another one of those easy to say and complex to do things,
We'll put it this way: if you have a gross profit margin of 80%, that's one thing. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities to increase your revenue and increase your cash flow, and your margin could diminish. However, if you got a profit margin of 10%, it's a different story.
Yeah, well, no, those are two radical extremes, and
two radical.
I would agree.
Extremes.
I guess what I'm suggesting is that, I'll give you an example if we have time. A quick example.
Sure.
One time I took a specific product. It was in the fashion business, and we didn't often have an opportunity to reorder. But occasionally you had a good basic kind of a product that you could reorder. And so I decided to do that with a top well-known name. Well, you guys would remember today. A lot of people would remember Basswegians. And so Basswegians were real stable, and everybody had 1 or 2 or 3 pairs in the closet, men and women. So what I decided to do is I decided to test a pricing model where I could measure whether or not I could increase my volume at a reduced price and then see if I made more money. And so I did that for several times, up and down, up and down. And I was able to actually measure the difference in volume based on certain price points. And in doing so, I could take the price too low and not make as many dollars. But in between the price that was supposed to be marked at and the price where I started losing money again because it was too low, there is a place to maximize the number of dollars that I could bring in on that one product. And so the interesting thing is that in that business in those days, while it was illegal, I got in a lot of trouble with the rep because he said, you're undercutting the prices. And I've got people up and down in the mall who are yelling about you undercutting the prices. And to that I said, well, first of all, you can't tell me what I can sell things at, number one. And it's not like I'm doing it as a loss leader. I'm actually making more money this way. And let me show you the math. Well, it blew him away. He never even thought about that because, they wanted to maintain a certain sort of image. But that experiment alone, because I could reorder quickly, I could get them in like a week. And so that experiment alone showed me that there is, every single product has its own supply and demand curve. And trying to find the best place to sell it is a very, very difficult thing to do. So it's, again, easy to say, hard to figure out.
Right. But I think if I can add this, what I liked about the story and what Ed's trying to do here, Ron, and for anybody listening, is that, this is not easy, but if you're able to have data and you have a plan and you have a forecast, you can then examine it to see what you're doing as you did.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're just shooting in the dark. And I think, so we find so many small business leaders are just overwhelmed instead of stepping back and looking at what am I doing, what's valuable, and what's just keeping me busy.
Right, and actually, I would even say that seasoned professionals, even consultants, to have conversations about price theory is something that very, very few consultants are able to have a conversation about because it's pretty advanced stuff. It's economics, it's supply and demand. Of course, that's economics, but it also has to do with trying to identify lifestyles and attitudes that customers have about the price differential. That's right. You combine all that stuff together, you're talking about the most advanced kinds of businesses that can do that. And if the owner can't get these basic things done, he certainly shouldn't start working on that particular problem. Right. That's sort of like, that would be number 9.
Well, as you both have indicated, it's very complex. It isn't a 3-hour job. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
And one opportunity leads to another opportunity, which leads to another opportunity. So this is something that has to be ongoing, and the consultant needs to be part of the process. In closing this presentation, I would recommend this is for everybody out there that's listening. If you don't have a value building model, you should find one that best suits your company and begin implementing it. It should start with a robust strategic plan. Take a look at the value builders strategies that are in here. It'll open your mind. It's just not on the expense cuts. It's the holistic approach of evaluating a company. And once you get this process going, you have to engage your workforce with a high-performing culture, preferably, and finally get outside help and optimize results.
Great job. Yeah, I think from my perspective here, Ed, you did a magnificent job of pulling all the pieces that Ron and you and I have been talking about and letting people then decide themselves what model works best for them. It's like they're not all the same. Some are easier to implement than others. But the most important thing, as you pointed out, is it gives you a standard, a baseline from which to measure whether you're doing well or poorly. That's not internal, but external. That is a standard. So I think that's really meaningful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say, if you go, here's the conclusion 1 through 5, it ought to be underneath 5 ought to be 0. Start. it's like start something.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Be consistent, and do a little bit every week. And you don't have to spend are you waking hours on this, but to start and do a little bit every week and kind of push through the process and get some outside help, to or pull one of our outlines or somewhere online, get an outline and get started, and then call people in when you get stuck and you don't know what to do next.
Right. Right.
Because you have to start doing some of these things. For every little story that I give you about how something I did worked pretty well, there were 10 more or 100 more things I tried that didn't work.
Right.
Or
Right.
I wasted my time, or
Right.
so that happens. This is something that building a plan and following it through is something that will create value in your business. And so when you're tired of just existing, and you're tired of not having the money in the bank to meet your bills or your payroll, and you want to create value, this is
Wait, yeah.
the best way to do it, to proactively do it. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's where this really worked well, Ed, because basically you simplified the whole thing and gave people a fairly robust, as you said, way of going ahead that even a small business with 5 or fewer employees could do without overwhelming its staff.
And let me just also remind everybody that if you would like to see some of these other presentations, they're easy to find. If you go on YouTube, just type in 3 Consulting Amigos. And while there may be some other stuff in there, like the other amigos that were in the movie, for the most part, they're mostly our videos. And so you can easily go through and find the one that makes sense to you. We've got Baldrige 1, Baldrige 2, customers, onboarding, assessments, Baldrige assessments, and on and on. So I mean, we've done an awful lot of programs, and so you can get a lot of help simply by remembering to go there. And when you do, if you'd like to be reminded that when we do one of these every week or so, just be sure to sign up and subscribe.
No, I appreciate that. And Ed, would you go to the final slide so that people can see kind of where they can reach out to get us individually or get to the videos?
Well, thank you, Ray, for reminding me. Here's our list of contacts, our logos, our contact information. Please take a couple minutes and write them down and give us a call.
Right. And as to wrap this up, is that Ron suggests you go and subscribe to our channel and on YouTube, and you can get access to all the videos and get a lot deeper into some of these topics. So again, I want to thank everybody listening. Ron, I want to thank you for your comments, and Ed, specifically, I think you did a great job, and anybody who's listening can benefit from this tremendously. Yeah. So with that,
excellent.
Thanks again. That brings to conclusion another episode of the 3 Consulting Amigos.